At 4:17 a.m. on an otherwise quiet Tuesday morning, the stillness of Sandton was shattered as 17 armed Hawks officers positioned themselves around Julius Malema's mansion, executing a search warrant that analysts say may alter the arc of South African politics for years to come. What they uncovered inside exceeded all expectations. Stacked among what appeared to be ordinary personal files and administrative folders was an extensive maze of financial movements amounting to more than 139 million rand, an intricate arrangement of concealed accounts spanning 3 different countries, and carefully hidden documentation that prosecutors have already begun describing as the most devastating paper trail ever unearthed in a modern South African political investigation. The operation itself stretched over 9 relentless hours, yet experts believe that its political, legal, and national consequences will reverberate far into the future. This was not the kind of scandal that briefly dominates headlines before receding into public memory. Rather, it was the culmination of a meticulously planned 3-year investigation involving international forensic specialists, testimony from a dozen former EFF insiders, and coordinated cooperation from major banks in Malaysia, Dubai, and Switzerland. Understanding the implications requires examining the operation in detail, what the Hawks seized, the legal strategies already forming on both sides, and why constitutional scholars argue that Malema may now face the gravest criminal exposure ever directed at a major opposition leader in South Africa. The magnitude of the raid becomes clearer when considering the covert lead-up. For 6 full weeks before setting foot on the property, Hawks operatives had been monitoring Malema's mansion using thermal imaging systems, specialized long-range surveillance tools, and telecom intercepts authorized under special provisions granted by the National Prosecuting Authority. What set this operation apart from typical political probes was the presence of asset forfeiture experts who entered the property equipped to extract encrypted digital files, reconstruct deleted data, and secure devices that could potentially contain years of financial history. Alongside them were 3 forensic accountants who entered with the first wave of officers. According to reports that later surfaced, Malema initially appeared calm during the early stages of the search, going as far as to offer the lead investigator a cup of coffee, though that outward composure steadily eroded as the volume and sensitivity of seized material became increasingly apparent. Within 4 hours, investigators had filled 17 sealed containers with documents, laptops, tablets, external hard drives, and encrypted drives. Security cameras around the home captured Malema making multiple phone calls, his demeanor shifting from collected confidence to visible anxiety as he watched officers remove boxes filled with evidence. The seized documents revealed, according to prosecutors, a deliberate and highly structured pattern of financial movements designed to obscure both the origin and the final destination of funds funneled through networks affiliated with the EFF. Bank statements tied to accounts that Malema had never publicly disclosed showed monthly deposits ranging from 800,000 rand to 2.4 million rand between 2017 and 2021. None of the accounts were registered in his own name, rather, they were linked to 3 shelf companies that shared an address with 17 other entities in Johannesburg. Digital signature analysis connected multiple fund transfer authorizations to Malema's verified parliamentary electronic signature. Investigators also discovered voice recordings, referenced in earlier leaked memos, capturing Malema personally discussing specific financial transactions with his advisors. These recordings, prosecutors say, tie the movement of the money directly to him and form one of the central pillars of the state's case. Yet the investigation did not originate with a whistleblower or insider leak. Instead, it began when forensic auditors reviewing the collapse of VBS Mutual Bank in 2018 identified a strange anomaly. Amid the rubble of fraudulent activity that contributed to the bank's downfall, auditors found a suspicious pattern of payments, specifically, 5.3 million rand distributed into 7 accounts within a 72-hour period in March 2017. Tracking those payments backward led investigators to entities directly connected to financial structures associated with the EFF. This disturbing link prompted the Hawks to launch a separate, covert investigation into the flow of funds. Once international cooperation agreements allowed access to foreign banks, the scope of the inquiry rapidly expanded. Malema responded predictably. Within 6 hours of the raid's conclusion, he appeared on several national news platforms where he dismissed the operation as a politically motivated attack orchestrated by a government panicking over his criticism of President Ramaphosa's land reform strategy and the EFF's aggressive position on issues of state capture. His rhetoric followed a familiar pattern, framing criminal investigations as tools of political persecution. But what made his response different this time was his refusal to directly address the allegations involving foreign accounts. Instead of answering pointed questions, he shifted his focus toward broader themes such as racial inequality, the historical exclusion of Black South Africans from economic opportunities, and claims of systemic bias within the justice system. Analysts noted that Malema was deliberately leaving room for legal maneuvering by avoiding explicit denials while simultaneously reinforcing a narrative that resonates with his core supporters. The official EFF statement released 18 hours after the raid was noticeably more cautious. It acknowledged that documents had been seized but insisted they were routine administrative materials that any political organization might possess. The statement emphasized the party's compliance with Independent Electoral Commission financial regulations and welcomed any investigation into its affairs. It also pointed out that other major political parties had faced similar investigations without prosecutions. Yet the statement strategically avoided addressing the specific amounts mentioned in media reports or the allegations concerning foreign accounts, an omission that signaled the advice of cautious legal counsel waiting to see the full extent of evidence before committing to public claims. The link to VBS Mutual Bank elevated the matter far beyond administrative irregularities into the realm of potentially serious criminal conduct. The collapse of VBS wiped out the life savings of thousands of South Africans and exposed a network of corruption described in the Moto report as systematic theft involving executives and politically connected intermediaries. While Malema was not explicitly named in the report, subsequent investigative work uncovered payment patterns suspiciously aligned with certain EFF financial structures. Prosecutors now argue that Malema not only knew about the bank's illicit activities but even attended meetings in which specific transactions were discussed, a claim reportedly supported by testimony from former VBS executives. Adding further weight to the situation is Malema's legal history. He was convicted of hate speech in 2012 and issued fines but avoided jail time. In 2016, charges of money laundering related to a government tender were withdrawn after key witnesses altered their statements. That case involved a 52 million rand contract granted to a company in which he held partial ownership. Because those charges were withdrawn without prejudice, prosecutors retained the option to reinstate them. This time, however, authorities appear determined not to repeat the missteps of past investigations. They have secured sworn affidavits, authenticated digital evidence using blockchain verification, and constructed multiple independent chains of proof designed to prevent the case from collapsing if one witness becomes compromised. The public discussion surrounding a possible 15-year prison sentence stems from the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, which sets that maximum punishment for offences involving more than 500,000 rand where deliberate attempts were made to mislead authorities. If prosecutors prove that Malema knowingly received and concealed illicit funds and used political influence to facilitate or protect the transactions, he could face several individual charges, each with its own potential sentence. Courts may order sentences to run concurrently or consecutively depending on whether they consider the acts part of a single ongoing scheme or separate criminal offences. The political implications may ultimately overshadow even the legal stakes. The EFF's identity is deeply intertwined with Malema's image as a fearless revolutionary challenging entrenched power. A conviction would not simply remove a leader, it would force a reckoning with the movement's credibility, especially among younger voters. Recent surveys show that nearly half of South Africans under 35 view corruption allegations as a decisive factor in choosing political representation. Without that demographic, the EFF could face substantial internal fracturing. This is intensified by the fact that both Malema and his deputy, Floyd Shambu, are implicated in similar VBS-related allegations. Without stable leadership, the party risks splitting into competing factions, potentially reshaping South Africa's broader political landscape. For prosecutors, one of the most significant breakthroughs may be the digital metadata embedded within spreadsheets and documents recovered during the raid. Many of the files originated from devices registered to Malema. One crucial spreadsheet titled Reconciliation March 2018 had been accessed 47 times over 2 years from devices linked to him and his financial advisor. Although the document contains no overt admissions of wrongdoing, its structure strongly suggests the systematic management of undisclosed funds. Malema's legal team is expected to pursue a three-pronged defense strategy, challenging the validity of the search warrant, arguing that all transactions were legitimate political or business dealings, and weaving a narrative of selective prosecution aimed at discrediting the state's motives. This final argument does not require proving innocence, it only needs to introduce enough doubt to suggest political bias. Similar cases in South Africa, from Jacob Zuma to Ace Magashule, have taken between 18 and 36 months from initial investigation to trial, with pre-trial motions and appeals often prolonging proceedings. However, prosecutors believe that the extensive digital evidence and international cooperation involved in this case will limit the delay tactics that have historically undermined high-profile corruption prosecutions. Public opinion remains sharply divided. EFF supporters have organized protests framing the investigation as a targeted attack on black empowerment, while civil society groups argue forcefully that accountability must apply equally regardless of political affiliation. Online discussions reveal widespread skepticism rooted in a long-standing belief that influential figures rarely face meaningful consequences in South Africa's justice system. This skepticism could reshape public attitudes toward the case and the future of the EFF. International observers are also monitoring developments closely. South Africa's ability to successfully prosecute financial crimes carries significant implications for its global reputation, particularly amid concerns from the Financial Action Task Force regarding greylisting. Diplomats from the United States and European Union have issued statements emphasizing the importance of transparency and accountability. Legal scholars outline 3 possible outcomes: a full conviction, a negotiated settlement avoiding severe prison time, or dismissal on procedural grounds. Each outcome carries profound implications for democratic institutions and public trust. Ultimately, this case is far more than a dramatic early morning raid. It is a test of whether South Africa's democratic and legal institutions can uphold accountability without yielding to political pressure. Over the next 18 months, as investigations deepen and the legal battle intensifies, the nation will confront a defining question: are its institutions strong enough to withstand the storms approaching, or political turbulence erode the very foundations of accountability and justice?